I don't even know why I try. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. We've got a lot of things to go over today. We're going to start with the great Aaron Judge. Mets Braves this weekend. Pennant race fever. Who's your NL MVP? Jets Giants. We'll talk about from the previous week, preview some of the games coming up this week. We'll touch on this whole Ime Udoka story, which I'm already kind of tired of, but we can touch on it real quick. And then we've got some inspiration for you today, right? We're going to talk about the inspiration of John Wall and the great inspiration of Albert Pujols. But first, Kenny, let's jump over to you, man. First, I got to tell you, there's probably some happy folks there in Cleveland right now, right?
Oh, yeah. Listen to this weekend in Cleveland sports. Well, the Browns, it wasn't that great of a weekend because, they couldn't pull off the W. Oh, no. Well, they won on Thursday, so it wasn't like it felt like a weird weekend for the Browns.
Right.
But the Guardians winning the Central, you know that Fangraphs had them winning the Central odds of 7.9% heading into the regular season. Most people, and the Guardian social media, one of the best sports social medias in the country. I'm not even biased. They took a whole bunch because a lot of people predicted them to finish in last place, fourth place, and everything like that. So kind of like Robert Saleh, they kept their receipts, and the social media after they won the Central, they posted like a whole bunch of like the predictions. Oh well, this is just a throwaway year for the Guardians. This is going to be a bad year. And sure enough, here they are, Central Division champs. And right now, it looks like, well, actually, I think it is confirmed now that they are the number 3 seed. So they're going to be hosting a wild card series. So that'll be exciting here.
Yeah, I don't know what even to say about the Guardians. I do think it's amazing. I always thought they had a good lineup, especially Jose Ramirez, who's probably the most underrated, superstar in the game.
Oh, yeah.
But it'll be fun to see my ex-Met players in there as they've been doing well. Again, that's a great trade, but it's Terry Francona for me, especially after they've traded away the pitching that they traded away. I listen. A lot of people will probably say that the White Sox took that big step backwards. The Twins took that big step backwards, but you got to just give the Guardians credit here.
Oh, yeah. And I sent you this stat. Once again on their social media, they posted it. Since Terry Francona has taken over as manager, 19 games that they've played where they were mathematically eliminated overall. So like on average, that's about 3 games this season. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's amazing. And he struggles with health issues, Terry Francona, but yet he just churns along and churns along. Amazing. But we got to start with you and Mr. Aaron Judge tying the record, hitting number 61 last night. Go for it, man. What do you got?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad that first of all it's done. At least this part of it's done. I feel like this was a huge monkey off of his back. And you can kind of tell it was starting to get to him. Not even just the fact that he's breaking such a long-standing record, but like all of the walks and stuff. I don't know if you caught this in the early part of the broadcast. David Cohn walking like a chicken because he went 5 straight plate appearances with a walk.
Really?
And that's one of the things where it's like you can tell he's not necessarily struggling, but it's like, man, I'm doing everything I can, but they're just not giving me a pitch to hit. Right. And when he hit it, it really matters. I'd have to look this up again, but I remember it was maybe a couple weeks ago. Over 30 of his home runs, I want to say now it might be 40, either gave the Yankees the lead or tied the game. And that was the case last night.
Mr. Clutch, yeah.
Garrett Cole was cruising through 5, hit a huge wall in the 6th. Game is tied. He comes up in the 7th, gives them a 2-run home run, take the lead. Yankees kind of go on to win. At this point, like, wins and losses aren't as important because, I mean, unless the Astros like pretty much lose out and the Yankees win out, Yankees are going to be the 2 seed.
Right.
So it's really like wins and losses aren't that important. So And also Aaron Judge, like, I don't know if you saw that lineup yesterday, but basically everyone was sitting. Anthony Rizzo actually put together the lineup. Because, division champs, like, you got nothing else to really play for. So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, let's just let all the veterans kind of take the lead here. So
that dugout
um
went crazy for when he hit that on. You can tell how popular he is on that team. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just so interesting because, like, now you're looking at this. Yeah, 61 home runs, 130 RBIs. He's batting 313. His on base is up to 425 because of all these walks. He's almost batting seven or slugging 700. The guy has been incredible. I think at this point, like, a little of the whispers of, well, Ohtani should win MVP, they've kind
Oh,
of gone away now.
come on.
Um, yeah,
Well,
I
Tony, we love
agree.
you, man. You're unbelievable, but my goodness, come on. Come on.
This is one of the best seasons, like, offensively ever.
Oh,
And
no doubt.
like, he's right now he's still leading a batting average. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he plays the next couple weeks. I would assume because they start a series against Baltimore, I believe, tomorrow.
Right.
So I would assume he'll be in the lineup until he at least breaks 62.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully
Yeah.
now, because they're coming back home, hopefully he can actually do it in front of the home crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something that I thought was very interesting from last night. Well, two things. First, he hit that 3-2 count in the seventh inning. The guy always just stays in the batter's box. He's locked in. He took kind of the step out, paced around, and then the next pitch he hits a home run. I think, like, that was kind of, to me, an indication that, yes, this was really just bearing down on him, and he just needed that time to, like, take a breath and, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just get it done. Next, we talked about this beforehand. No one caught the home run ball. The the fans came very close, and you could see the look on the guy's face where he almost had it.
They had their
Because
gloves and everything. Yeah.
yeah, and they said that value wise, it could be up to $2 million.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So
Wow.
the ball ended up getting back to Aaron Judge because it was in the Blue Jays bullpen, and in the, like, outside the tunnels, he ended up giving it to his mom, who has
Wow.
obviously been there
Yeah.
throughout most of his career. Kind of like, I know a lot of people continue to compare him to Derek Jeter, but kind of like Derek Jeter's parents.
Right.
Um, so he gave her the home run ball, which I think is incredible and awesome. I'm curious to see what's going to happen because Roger Maris Jr., who's kind of also been here the last couple weeks, like, ready to witness history, he'd kind of hinted that they have something special planned when he breaks a home run record.
Oh
So I'm
wow. Okay.
interested to see what that's going to look like, especially
Too.
now that it looks like it's probably going to happen at Yankee Stadium. So
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story, isn't it? It just and Aaron Judge's backstory as well. And I knew this going in, but I was wondering where his dad was at, and you may have brought up a good point. He's probably not vaccinated. Um and so obviously you can't even get into Canada still, right? If you're not. So I'm guessing that's the case. But Aaron Judge is he's clearly either African American or mixed with African American blood, but he has no idea who his real parents are. He doesn't want to find out. We celebrate adoption, right? Because that means that he wasn't aborted. So that's a great thing. But those are his adopted parents, and that he's. I think if I remember reading right, the first day he was born, he was adopted right away, and he's an amazing guy. I think he handled this with grace. Reminds me a lot of Hank Aaron, and back then, obviously, he wasn't getting the racial stuff that Aaron was getting. I think people were rooting for him to break, Roger Maris's record, and but Roger Maris was getting a lot of heat back in the day, not racially, but because he's breaking iconic Babe Ruth's record, but it's an amazing story. It really is, and I can't wait for him to hit number 62. Um, Part of me wishes there was more season left so that he can hit 74, right? And just kind of erase Barry
yeah,
Bonds and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and go the major league route. But I think this breaking it in the American League, another Yankee, 61 years later, just amazing, just absolutely amazing. Um, all right, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. Last night, if you were me and they had Braves and Nats on MLB TV, and it was the Braves feed. So of course you had the Braves announcers. Shout out to Mike Clark. They're crazy homers. But
Oh yeah.
at first, the Braves have the lead. The Nats, the Nats had the lead. They were leading 2-1. The Braves tie it relatively late. They go into extra innings. Braves get a run at the third, obviously, with the second and third. They get a run at the third with, I think, one out. Couldn't get him in. And in the bottom of the 10th, the Nats do get their guy in. The Nats walk off with a 3-2 win. It is so dangerous playing these teams this time of year, right? The Nats and the Marlins and the Pirates, any of these teams that have had terrible years, man, this makes their year. We see this every single year. But anyway, in the
Oh
meantime, the
yeah.
Mets are losing 4-0, and it's not looking great. And here's Eduardo Escobar, who has had just an amazing September. I mean, he's now up to 20 homers, 67 RBIs. He's hit 8 homers and had 25 now RBIs in the month of September. He's just caught fire. He worked hard. He never got discouraged. He lost his job for a little while to Guillaume. And and he's signed. I think he was the one who signed for 4 years with the Mets. And so he's here for a bit. And he just kept persevering. And it's great to see how the true, because he's always been a very, very good hitter. Teams have picked him up at the deadline a lot. Anyway, and so he hits a 2-run homer. It's 4-2 now. He gets a big base hit to knock in 2 runs to tie it, and sure enough, he gets the winning hit in the 10th inning. He was looking to go to left field because they had that whole side of the infield open. Hits it right into left field. Lindor scores 5-4. It just felt like a pennant. There's no way that you can tell me that the Mets weren't looking at the scoreboard and saw, 10 minutes earlier that, okay, the Nats just won. We have a chance now to go into Atlanta, and really all we need for a tiebreaker is one game, because the Mets leave that series. There's no game 163 anymore, as you pointed out a couple of times. So the Mets lead that series now 9-7. So all they need to do is win, one more game, and they could clinch the season series against the Braves. So if they did finish in a tie, it would go to the Mets. So it was such an important, it felt like a pennant race, and going back and forth was amazing. Couple of quick things I'll say, Braves Mets, and I want to hear your take on this weekend coming up. And I hope the games are still in Atlanta. I know we've had that awful weather that's passing through now that part of the country, are going to. Their first baseman and third baseman have gone into horrible slumps all of a sudden. And it's you can't figure out why. Now Olsen and Riley, I think Olsen, man, was something like 6 for his last 72 or something like that. He's just gone into this horrific slump, and it makes it highlighted even worse because Freddie Freeman has got to be on the list of MVP candidates this year. He's having just quietly a spectacular year with the Dodgers. Probably going to win the batting title. But Riley also has kind of gone into the tank. So you just wonder if some of these guys are tired at this point of the year, because these guys have been playing every single day. But their closer has righted the ship. He went through about a month of just awful pitching, and he's been unhittable for the last week or so, but especially last night. I mean, I was tuned into that 9th inning, and man, oh man, he looked like the Jensen of like 5 years ago. He was just unhittable. Anyway, so now you've got this big 3-game series that'll probably decide the division. The Mets have played well against the Braves and in Atlanta this year. This, I think, bodes well for both teams, because these are big games. They're going to have postseason feel. I'm sure probably Saturday and Sunday will be on national TV. Not so sure about Sunday. It should be if it's not. I'm sure Saturday will be a Fox game. It is Sunday night. And so I listen. I'm thinking the Mets take 2 out of 3, and let's go. That's it. And now they moved DeGrom up. He's going to start on Friday on his regular rest. Then you got Scherzer going on Saturday, and then you have Chris Bassett going on Sunday. But listen, the Braves pitchers match right up, with them. So what are your thoughts on Braves Mets this weekend?
Well, you stole the words out of my mouth here. Postseason feel is definitely what it's going to feel like. because you got DeGrom against Fried on Friday.
Oof, man, oh man.
Saturday is let me just confirm this. Oh, it is the Fox game.
Yeah.
Scherzer against Wright. Wright might win the Cy Young this year.
Yeah, either him or Alcantara, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it is a Sunday night game. You got Bassett against Charlie Morton, which Charlie Morton always shows up in big games. So
big games, yeah. What a series this is going to be. It's exciting.
Yeah, this is definitely like the battle right here. I think whoever wins it will probably end up winning the division.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, I think the Mets, the biggest thing for them is just not getting swept. Because yeah, you don't want to lose the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Because like it's bigger than just like, oh well, you're one of the wild card teams. Like winning, because at this point, I mean, you have enough of an advantage over St. Louis that whoever wins the East is going to be the number 2 seed. Yeah. And that's where you want to be, because you don't want to be in that spot where you're in a wild card. I know the Mets, if there's any team that's built for it, it is the Mets. Right. Because like
3-game series, yeah.
3-game series, you throw out DeGrom, you throw out Scherzer, you're done.
Yeah.
But then also that means that whoever you would face, so probably if you're looking at, because they would probably be the 4, they would be facing the Dodgers. And first, you don't want to face the Dodgers until you have to. So that would be the NLCS. But then if you're going into the wild card series, that probably means that you're not putting up your 1-2 in games 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And so that to me, like the division is critical if Mets are going to win the World Series.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, this is going to have a huge postseason. I do think the Mets are built for this. I think that this is because like Max Scherzer, he's a big game pitcher too. DeGrom is as well. Obviously, it's been a couple years since he's really been like in a huge game. But I think like when it comes to the big moment, he's not the type of guy that's going to back down. I think those are your 2 wins right there.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously the Mets sweep, I think that would that clinch it? I think that might actually clinch it.
Probably.
Yeah, it would clinch it because the magic number 6. So
yeah.
So obviously a sweep would win it, but I think more importantly, you got to at least win those. You got to at least win the 2.
Yeah.
If you get swept, then good luck. But
yeah, I cannot see a scenario, and I don't like to make predictions because I'm usually wrong, but I can't see a scenario where the Mets get swept. I honestly can't even see a scenario where the Braves get swept in Atlanta. Like, both teams haven't played great in September. They've just both been okay. They both seem to win the games they needed to win, but it just felt like it was October last night. So looking forward to that this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. I'm going to throw a blind question at you here as we should start talking about this. I think the best race for the awards is the National League MVP. And for most of the year, it's been Paul Goldschmidt who has been the odds-on favorite. And he seems like he's always gotten talked about several times, but he's never won it. And the Cardinals, he's definitely carried them. But I think you got to really look at Austin Riley. I think he's been outstanding for the Braves. But my guy, Pete Alonso, has 40 homers and 131 RBIs. He leads the league in RBIs. He's batting something like 267. I mean, Freddie Freeman and Trey Turner, I think, will probably cancel each other out, as well as Mookie Betts, who I think has just had an outstanding year too. But I think a dark horse, I don't think he'll win it, but he'll probably get some votes, will be Arenado from the Cardinals. He's had a spectacular year as well. So who's your odds-on favorite out of that group?
I think it would still be Paul Goldschmidt for me. Because I'm looking at, like, you look at all of his overall stuff. I mean, he's 5th in the league in home runs at 35, which it's funny because Judge almost has double that. He's 2nd in RBIs behind Pete Alonso. Alonso's going to have the RBI title. I know that's not really a thing, but the RBI title. And batting average, he's 3rd behind McNeil and Freddie Freeman. So you look at kind of like his overall numbers. It kind of seems like he's the guy that's most consistent up there. Um, I don't know though, because I think kind of like I'm gonna make a comparison to Jimmy Rollins in 2008. Pete Alonso has a huge series. He hits a couple big clutch home runs
Yeah.
that might start steering it towards him.
Yeah.
You could make the argument also with Austin Riley. Freddie
Yeah.
Freeman, I feel like should be getting more love.
Yeah.
I think his biggest thing though, he only has 20 home runs.
Yeah.
Um, so that might kind of hurt him a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but I would probably still say it's Goldschmidt's to lose.
Okay, I'm with that. But you bring up a great point too, and I'll go back to 1999 when Chipper Jones just had this huge September to carry the Braves, into the division. They were fighting off the Mets then, but he wound up his stats wound up great. He had 45 homers if I remember right that year, and over 100 RBIs. But it was like late August and September, he just caught fire. It seemed like he was hitting a home run every night. But here on the national stage, if Alonso does, carry them or Riley carries them, that might carry some weight, with the National League voters for
Yeah.
sure. But I do think it's Goldschmidt's to lose. I agree. I agree. All right. Well, enough baseball for now. Let's jump into the NFL because it was a very interesting past weekend. And let's start though, not with Sunday. Let's start with Monday night. I have to tell you, man, I thought the Giants was going to win that game after Barkley made that run. I was like, they got a good shot here. And their receiver drops one that's right. This guy Cooper Rush is actually pretty good quarterback, especially for a backup, But he hits him right in the chest on the run, and he drops it. But then he makes this spectacular one-handed Odell Beckham Jr. type catch, in the end zone. And the Cowboys are good. They've got some really, really good playmakers, especially on their in their secondary and on their defense. And it seems like now Ezekiel Elliott has some help. That other running back is very good. But the Giants hung in there. I was proud of the way they played. I imagine you were too, but I think you wanted the W. So recap us on Giants Cowboys Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was really well said, and like I really wanted them to win, but I'm proud of the way they hung in there because like even though 2-0 and potentially 3-1 could be very nice, this team isn't really projected to go that high. I know I said, oh yeah, they could be 4-0, and still that would be great.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, the Cowboys they still have a better roster. Their defense is really tough. Also, Daniel Jones now is 0-9 in primetime games. Probably like 6 of them are against the Cowboys.
I did not know that. Wow.
Wow. He's almost as bad as Kirk Cousins in that way.
Oh yeah. Oh.
But also, like, it kind of seems like with Daniel Jones, and obviously it was right at the end of the game, and a part of it was like a weird mishap, and obviously the Sterling Shepard injury hurts a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But like when Daniel Jones doesn't make mistakes, the Giants have a chance to win.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2 years ago, he like led the league in turnovers. Last year wasn't great either. So I think the biggest thing is protecting the ball, but also it's really hard to protect the ball when you got a really good defense. It seemed like Daniel Jones had Cowboy defenders in his face all night long. And I forgot, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like they've drafted 8 offensive linemen in the last decade, and none of them have reached a second deal with the Giants, and none of them made a Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
They keep whiffing on the offensive line, and maybe that's a lot of the origin of the problem. Maybe it's not necessarily the quarterback or even the running back for that matter. Because like, if you don't have time to throw, then it's really hard to win games. Yeah. So I don't even know what the answer to that is, but it seems like they still have a shot. We'll see what they can pull off next week. Justin Fields is winning games, but also not really looking that good. So maybe he can win a couple games here.
Yeah, I mean, is there anybody that's going to say the Bears are that much better than the Giants? Of course not. I don't think so. I like their quarterback. He's going to make a lot of mistakes, but even though he's a few years behind Daniel Jones, that I seem in my mind, I like compare them. They seem to be kind of they either make the big play or they make the big mistake, and
Yeah.
so I think it's going to be interesting. And I do think the Bears are going to be much improved this year. I think the coaching is going to make a big difference for them. And I think just giving this guy the ball, leave him alone, let him play. Um, but I think it should be a W for the Giants this week. I really do. And offensive
Yeah.
line, yeah. But the defensive line of the Bears is not that great. He's not the monsters of Midway anymore, on the 85 Bears. So I think that I think that the Giants should win this game. I say 27-20, something like that. I think that the Giants are a little further ahead than the Bears, and it's a big game. If they go 3-1 as opposed to 4-0, you'll take that, right? I mean, 3-1 start after 4 games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'll take
Absolutely.
that. Absolutely. All right. I liked what the Jets did on Sunday. The Bengals, as you and I talked about last week, the Bengals played with a lot of desperation. The Bengals have probably a couple of the best playmakers in the league. Let's just face it. I mean, Chase, when it seems like when he wants to catch the ball, he's going to catch the ball. I mean, he just seems to be as close to being an unstoppable receiver as they have. And while the Jets secondary is crazy improved, uh, they just could not stop him when the game was on the line. And the Bengals played with a team that was like, there's no way we can go 0-3. So I
Yeah.
was like you, I was proud of the Jets' effort. I think they played hard. I think the Bengals are obviously a much better team at this moment, but I also think that the Bengals play with just a little bit more desperation there. Let me ask your opinion on some of these games, because Sunday, um, obviously the big game was Packers Bucks. We'll get to that in a second, but were you surprised that the Colts handled the Chiefs the way they did?
Yes. Which Nate's a Colts fan, so he was really excited. He showed me the score as it was happening. Um, Kind of seemed like a weird week for the Chiefs. I think this is one of those weeks where, you know how like there's usually always a couple of weeks in the NFL where it's like, well, I did not expect any of that to happen at all.
Right. This was one of them.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and the Colts, kind of like you had mentioned, the Bengals playing with desperation. The Colts, even though they have the tie, like
Yeah.
going 0-2-1, I
Yeah.
know their division is kind of rough, but
Yeah.
still, you don't want to go down. You don't want to go into week 4 without a win. And especially for a team that has a really good roster. I know Matt Ryan's kind of getting a little older, but I mean, they've got arguably the best running back in the league. They have a great defense. They've got a great offensive line. Their wide receivers are okay, but I think that's one of those things where they really needed the win. And it seemed like every once in a while you'll see like, wait, Patrick Mahomes did something that's like actually bad. And I think it was one of those times where you saw it. So
Yeah. A couple of things stand out for the Colts for me. Matt Ryan, it was like circa 2015. If he can find that fountain of youth like he did this past Sunday, they'll win some games. And their running back, who was nearly like the MVP last year, has gotten off to a really slow start. He seemed like he stepped it up this past week, and they need him because he's most of their offense. But if Ryan is healthy and if he gets protected, like you said, I think the Colts can do some damage. But I do think it was kind of a trap game for the Chiefs. Dolphins Bills. Were you surprised that the Dolphins pulled that game out and they're now kind of the talk of the NFL a little bit?
yeah, they pulled that one out of their butts, referencing the butt punt. Um, but it does seem kind of interesting because, like, I guess it's one of those things where I guess you probably should have seen it coming more, but I kind of didn't. Like, they have Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Like, those are two really good receivers.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tua isn't like, he's not an Aaron Rodgers type of skill guy or a Patrick Mahomes, but he's still pretty good. There's a reason why
Yeah.
he was drafted so high. A lot of
Yeah.
injuries to start out, but I don't know. This team also they're past kind of the distractions of what happened with Flores and everything like that, and their
Yeah.
owner, and they're just kind of they're balling out.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
think also kind of the same way as the trap game a little bit for the Bills. I
Yeah.
know they had like they dominated, but also something that was interesting. I don't know this number offhand, but last year, like when they won, they always won big. But against like good teams, it would always keep it really close.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
like when you look at like at the end of the year and they're like 11-6 with a huge point differential, a lot of times like when they win, like they're winning like 40-12 or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which hey, that's how if that's how you're gonna win, like
Yeah.
make it known.
Yeah.
Um, but it'll be interesting to kind of see how they bounce back because sometimes, like especially with Josh Allen, he could have really good games and then a clunker, and then another clunker after that because he still got it in his head. I think this week is big for them because especially if the Dolphins win, you'd be talking down 2 games, really down 2.5. I
Yeah.
know it's still
Yeah.
early in the
Yeah.
NFL season, but
No, man, it gets late early in the
yeah.
NFL for sure. Um, have you seen the video of the Buffalo offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, who, if I remember right, was a quarterback for a short period of time, when they messed up that last play, which was stunning, because Allen has been so big in those spots, and I just and he made light of himself in the press conference after, but to see him throw the computer and say it was man, oh man, because those guys got to remember, man, there's cameras all over the place, you know.
Oh yeah.
Um, but he made light of it and said, you know, it's not a moment I'm proud of. I'm sorry, you know. But obviously they care. Jacksonville knocking off the Chargers. Is there anything here with Jacksonville? And I know the Chargers coach taking a lot of heat, right, for Herbert, who's already banged up. I mean, pretty bad, especially in his midsection, his ribs. He's banged up, and it felt like the game was done, and he had him out there for the whole fourth quarter. Um, but Jacksonville, is there anything there that was seeing? Trevor Lawrence, obviously, same type of hype that Tua had. Maybe he's finally fulfilling some of his potential. Anything here now with Jacksonville handily knocking off the Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this number offhand. When was the last time Jacksonville was over 500?
No
Um,
idea. It seems like they've been bad a long time.
yeah, I guess maybe when Blake Bortles was their quarterback.
Blake
I don't even know if
Bortles.
he's still in the
Wow.
league.
Blake Bortles, man. Blast from
Um,
the past.
yeah, remember when he almost had Tom Brady eliminated from the playoffs? That was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, I think the big thing with Trevor Lawrence is having a little bit more stability at coach, having Urban Meyer there. Like really looking back, you kind of think like, wow, that
What
was
a
an absolute killer.
disaster. Wow. What a
Um,
disaster that was.
but I think like having Doug Peterson, who's won a Super Bowl, he's always been like a really good offensive minded guy. I think having him at the helm has really helped. Also like they had a pretty good free agency. They had a good draft. I think like I said this before, there's always one team that goes worst to first. Right now, that would be Jacksonville. They're in first place in their division. So
Yeah. You bring up such a great point, how the difference in coaching. And, you know, Doug Peterson, I read this somewhere this past week. It's so funny how how he left Philadelphia and it was so amicable, yet there was such animosity because he said very calmly, you know, I didn't like the owner. The owner didn't like me. I didn't get along with the GM. The GM didn't get along with me. So it's time for us to part ways, you know. And listen, I think because he handled it so well and a lot of that stuff didn't get in the media and stuff like that is why he got another job, because a lot of times people look and say, hey, you know, he can't get along with ownership or management. But he seems like not seems like, he's a very good coach. And obviously, you know, he did some magical things with the Eagles, and maybe he's going to do that here with Jacksonville. It's going to be interesting to watch. All right, Packers and Bucks. I mean, I got to admit, I didn't see most of this game, but I got home in the last 4 minutes. And the Bucks are playing obviously with desperation. They stop, they get the ball back, and they're driving, and they get a delay of game penalty. They get the touchdown. They get a delay of game penalty on the 2-point conversion. And the 2-point conversion looked like Fournette was just going to walk right into the end zone the way they had that play set up. but yet they had to delay a game. And Brady, he really deflected the blame on that. But doesn't that fall on the quarterback, especially in that, at that late in the game? I mean, I've never seen that. I don't think a delay a game penalty that late in the game.
Also, not even just like falls on the quarterback. If you're Tom Brady, it definitely falls on you, especially when your head coach is your boy, a defensive minded head coach. Like that's
I like
100%
Todd
on
Bowles. Come
Brady.
on, we
Yeah.
like Todd Bowles.
Well, I don't have a problem with him, but like
Right.
he's not known for his offense
His
necessarily.
and but also you bring up a great point. Him and Herm Edwards really got blasted here with the Jets when they were both with the Jets for their clock management,
Yeah.
and Bowles especially more than even Herm. Um, but I agree. That's got to fall on Tom Brady. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Something seems off with Tom Brady this year. Um, I think it's too early to say, oh well, he's washed up and done. But I think the whole retiring and then not retiring and the issues in his marriage have affected him a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, oh yeah, he should just retire. I've heard people say that, but
No, come on. Probably people have given up, said Tom Brady was too old, probably at least for the last 10 years, maybe even longer,
yeah,
So but I do think that, mentally it's certainly a strain, and maybe in hindsight, retirement was probably the right decision, at that time. But they, I know they had some injuries, and they had the suspension this past week, but they've got way too many good players. Also, Tampa was so smart to surround him with a lot of good players. I put this game as a little bit of a fluke because I do think they would have tied the Packers, and I do think the way the momentum was going that they would have won that game in overtime. From what
yeah.
I saw in those last 4 minutes. All right, let's jump to this week real quick. Big game tonight. We just talked about these two teams, right? Dolphins, Bengals tonight. Who you got?
Um, I don't know. Part of me says maybe the Dolphins go 4-0. That might be my Cleveland bias a little bit because Bengals 1-3 might be kind of on the verge of being done.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The Dolphins, they kind of seem to have like that the darling of the league right now, and especially being on the primetime stage. I think this will be a good test, and I think they'll come out on top.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm with you. Certainly, you're picking Giants over the Bears. We talked about that a little bit. I'm gonna go Jets over the
Yeah.
Steelers. I think that I don't know. Did you see this where the almost all of the offensive players for the Steelers want the offensive coordinator fired because they're thinking that the offense is way too conservative. So there's definitely some issues there in Steeler land. Trubinsky, you've kind of put your eggs with him now. He's got some talent. Just let him play.
Yeah.
I know you got this guy on the sidelines. You should have maybe played him from the beginning. But Trubinsky can make some plays. He has some talent. There's a reason why he was the number one pick. I don't think he's been a total bust. And so I'm hoping none of that gets resolved this week, though, and that the Jets win. I think the Jets will win this week. I think that their talent is a little bit comparable to the Steelers right now. But listen, the Steelers have a Hall of Fame, in my mind, a Hall of Fame coach. So we'll see. All right, the big game Sunday night, Bucks Chiefs in Tampa Bay, I believe. If they're able to play that game there, I think there's some talk of moving that game to Minneapolis, I believe, indoors to the stadium up there.
Oh.
Yeah, which is kind of odd. But I guess moving it as far away as possible, and maybe that's the closest stadium that is free. I would think Houston would have been, relatively close, but who would you? Well, you got still Mahomes and against the GOAT. What are you thinking?
Um, I don't know. That's a toughie. I'm gonna go with the Bucks. It's tough because both of them are coming off of bad losses, so I feel like it's gonna be a really tight game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised either way, but I'll go with Tom Brady, especially Mike Evans will be back after his suspension. So
Yeah.
I'll go with the Bucks.
Yeah. What was the old coach doing on the sidelines, by the way? He doesn't still work for them, right? Like he's not still like coaching. Bruce
Yeah,
Arians?
he's isn't he like a rando advisor or
Yeah.
like fake
But was he
GM or something? I
What
don't
was he
know.
doing on the sidelines telling Mike Evans, get out there and go get that guy? you know? Oh man. And that was just an odd scene as well. It cost the guy a game. I mean, and that's a guy who's you can make an argument he's their most valuable player. All right, I'm going Chiefs, by the way, in that game. I'm with you. I think well, no, you said Bucks. I think Mahomes is gonna I think we're going to start to see the old Mahomes here in this particular game. I think it'll be really, really close. So, all right. Hey, so I don't want to spend too much time on Ime Adoka. And I'll tell you why. And I'm glad to talk about it if you wanted to. But I find myself, and maybe you're the same here these days. I find myself over the last few years not agreeing with Stephen A. Smith that much as I used to. Um, I think he's brilliant. I think he's a great broadcaster, great commentator. I think he knows his stuff, especially with the NBA. There's just some takes that he has that I'm like, okay, not really. But this one I kind of agree with. He's been very clear, and he's gotten hot water with Malika Andrews, who I think does a really good job, by the way, on that NBA countdown, and then when she's on the sidelines and everything like that. But um, she has a different perspective as a lady, and I get that, But Stephen A. Um, said that he felt that the Celtics handled it really bad. Kendrick Perkins said the same thing because they've kind of left open a lot of speculation that either something like that you handle behind the scenes, and if you're gonna discipline him, and if it's a suspension, then I guess you gotta then tell the whole story because you can't just say he's suspended, contract detrimental to the team, and not say anything. But and that's sort of what they did, and that leaves open to so much speculation, which Brad Stevens said that that's harmed a lot of the ladies that work in that organization because people are assuming, hey, maybe it's her, maybe it's her, maybe it's her. Um, but his other take was that either that or just let him go, and then you could kind of then let the speculation go. You could just say we just felt like we needed a change, which would be hard, right? To say after a guy just took you to the NBA Finals, 2 games from the championship, but then I guess let the speculation go. And I don't know. And here's also where I'm thinking, Kenny, there probably wasn't a great way to handle what's really a messy type situation. So I think I'm going to be more interested in how it affects the Celtics going forward. Hopefully families here that are affected, that all of that gets worked out, behind the scenes. Obviously, there's at least 3 people involved, right? Him, his longtime, fiance, and who's Nia Long, as we had said last week, are, and the lady that's involved. So anyway, that was my take. I was a little bit kind of done with hearing about it because I'm like, maybe the Celtics should have just let him go. What's your take?
Yeah, so I think my takeaway is, yeah, like any kind of like sexual harassment's always messy. There's always a lot of layers to it. And kind of like you, I don't really want to get into because like I could go really deep. I think I might do like a blog post about it too, just about how it's important to keep your family first. But we can talk about that another time. I think the biggest thing is it's going to be interesting how it affects the Celtics because we are kind of on the brink of a new season. I
Yeah.
believe the Celtics are still the favorites to win the whole thing. And now with a cloud of uncertainty when it comes to like their head coach, like that could be big because he's been a big part of changing the culture there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Something else that this is just kind of a rando side note. A couple of my Celtics friends have said the Celtics have been ever since they traded away Isaiah Thomas, which is kind of interesting. But I mean, it is what it is.
The other
But
Isaiah
yeah,
Thomas, not our
yeah.
Isaiah Thomas. Okay.
Um, so I don't know. It is just a messy situation.
Yeah.
Um, I think it probably would have been better because they also in their statement said, "Yeah, we're going to figure out whether or not we're going to fire him." It sounds like they're waiting for more evidence to just fire him. And I think if you're going to do it, just do it.
It's a cloud that hovers, that is just going to hover there, you know. And, there's other things about, there should have been punishment for the lady as well. I mean, there's some companies that do that. Yes, it's a position of power. And I think if that's not in their policy, then why would they do it? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's it's messy. It's horrible. I hate to say I'm glad it's not the Knicks. We had enough of those controversies over the year with Derek Fisher and Isaiah and Stephon Marbury, all the stuff that happened with them. So uh hopefully they'll get that resolved. All right, because from that story, it's time to go to some inspiration, yes?
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm gonna start. I want to talk about John Wall, and I sent you this article, so please chime in as well. And then I'm gonna let you. We've got some time here, so I'm gonna let you. Definitely, I know you want to talk about Albert Pujols because there's been a lot of inspiration there lately. And the John Wall story is amazing, and I was surprised by it because John Wall was always outwardly very cocky type player, but you never know what's going on in someone's heart. You never know how the Lord is gonna work and move that person. So just some background for some that might say John Wall, really, I don't remember him well or whatever. John Wall was a great college player at Kentucky. Got drafted obviously very high by the Wizards, and I would say that he's had some really good moments in the NBA. I didn't think I remember I didn't think that his game would translate well to the NBA because he's a little reminded me of Russell Westbrook, who's obviously had a great career, but his game was predicated just on speed. I mean, Wall just wanted to run past you. But as he got in the NBA, he developed a really good jump shot, and that team was good. They had some success. They almost beat the Celtics back in 2017 in the playoffs, and they were getting to the playoffs pretty much every year. They would get eliminated pretty quickly, but they were probably a piece or two away from actually being a contender back then. And then he tore his Achilles. And for any athlete, but especially a basketball player, as we've seen with Kevin Durant and a few others, that's a really bad injury to come back from, especially when you have to pivot as much as you do in the NFL, as well as we don't see torn Achilles as much in baseball, but you see that in football as well as in basketball, not as much as you used to, but quite a bit. So with that injury, it was a big setback for him, and it kind of launched him into a bit of a depression. But he seemed like he was trying to snap out of it. And oh, by the way, he signs this huge max deal contract with the Wizards, so he's got a lot of money. And the reason why I mention that is because he's very clear in the article that just because you're an NBA star player and that you have all this money, it doesn't mean that you're not going to suffer from very deep depression. And I should also say John Wall grew up very, very poor. He grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. And as he puts it, that he wasn't, I didn't quite know what that meant because I hadn't heard that expression before. He said that he wasn't a Foot Locker kid. And I guess that meant that, his parents really couldn't afford it. It was his mom. His dad was in jail when he was born. And then when he's 9 years old, his dad dies of liver cancer. So he never really got to know his dad well. But he's very, very, very close with his mother. And it's his mother that takes him to these practices all the time. It's his mother that would go shopping at flea markets to find him the best sneakers. So she's not spending, money, on new Jordans and stuff like that. And so they developed just an inseparable bond. Wall never did get married, but he has two sons from a relationship. And so he's got these really humble beginnings. And so he's really appreciative of what he gets. Yet there is still this fog over him and that he just couldn't pinpoint, what it was about. And then these two things happen. He tears his Achilles. So now the only thing that he says that he's been really good at his whole life is gone for now. And he doesn't even know if he's going to make a full recovery. And remember what his game was predicated on: speed, so he knows he's probably going to lose some of that. And then the tragedy happens. His mom is diagnosed with cancer, and he's getting ready to play a game in Charlotte, and his mom flatlines, and so one of his teammates go to him and say, "Your mom just died. We got to get you there." And on his way there, they drive from Charlotte to Raleigh. On his way there, she's revived, and she lives another, I think it said 3-4 more days. And he spends the night there with her, holding her hands. Her eyes opened up one time to look at him, and had tears, and she closed her eyes, and she never recovered again. She passed away, and this devastated him because he gives a lot of little anecdotes in this article about how his mom was so appreciative of what she had did in his life, but the things that he had given back. As a quick example, he makes it a big deal that he got tickets to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and um, he took his mom as his date. And there's a picture in the article of him and his mom with President Obama and Michelle Obama. And she's not used to being in these situations, so she said, "I gotta say, you guys just rock." But that's like the night of her life. She goes to this dinner and she meets and the president and his wife, and so that he kind of highlights their relationship. When she dies now, he is just now plummeled into now this really dark hole and this deep, deep depression. And he starts thinking that, and expressing it pretty out loud, that he's going to kill himself, that he starts thinking about suicide and how he's going to do it. He starts to even plan it out. And, but then the thoughts in his mind are his sons, his two little sons, and what would they think? And here was, to me, the point of the article that we want to make today, right, for everybody, is that he just one day woke up and called one of his friends, and he added a word in there that we won't use, right? But he basically said, "I need help. I need help." And his friend, got him right away, to a psychologist, and got him the help that he needed to prevent suicide. And I think it's just so awesome that he's talking openly about it now, that he was this close to taking his own life. Um, but there's something in there, and I'll say this: he doesn't really mention God in the article, maybe once or twice in there, but it has to be a God thing that kept him going. We talked about the Giants player who actually took the action to shoot himself and is still living, and he's working now in the Giants front office. But this was a little bit different to see, again, an NBA player who, I'll just use this word, he was kind of a cocky NBA player. Um, to realize that he went through all of this, because we also say about some NBA players like Ben Simmons and a few others, why aren't they playing? And then you start to take a step back and you realize basketball is not the most important thing in their lives. For John Wall, that's what he had all those years, just that and his mom, and both taken away from him. And so now, he's plummeled in. So obviously there was some depression stuff there beforehand that that just piled onto that. And he realized that he has a problem and he gets help for it. Thank God. So I got to tell you, he's a guy I'm going to root for this year. He got traded to the Clippers. And if he's healthy, the Clippers have got quite a team. If him and Kawhi both come back, the Clippers got a very interesting team. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'll leave it there. I know you read the article. If you had any thoughts, just go ahead and chime in, and then you can jump right into Albert Pujols.
Yeah. So I'll just add, I love that he said, "I need help." It's important to get the help that you need. Um, so real quick on Albert Pujols here. So obviously I know the focus has been on Aaron Judge the last couple of nights and everything. But Albert Pujols hits home run number 700 Friday night.
Unbelievable.
First of all, now he's the fourth player ever to hit that milestone. which
Exclusive
is still
club, right?
incredible.
Yeah.
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 Um, and I look at it too, and first of all, he said again, like, I think someone offered him the ball, whoever caught it, he's like, keep it. Like, it, stuff like that's for the fans anyway. So I think that's kind of interesting. I also stumbled across a very interesting interview he had where he was kind of talking a little bit about his life and kind of growing up. His he grew up in the Dominican Republic, grew up primarily with his dad. His parents had gotten divorced early on. Just a very rough childhood. And he said, like, God gave me this gift of baseball and I continue to use it every day for his glory. And this was before he hit 700. He's like, well, if God wants me to hit 700 home runs, I'm going to do it. If not, then it just wasn't meant to be. And like, I think for me, and also you talked about alcoholism and how I believe it was his mom was a pretty big alcoholic. And he said, like, for me, I just don't want my kids to see that. So I've never touched it a day in my life. And this is like, a guy that's won championships, guy that's won divisions, and there's always a champagne celebration. It seems like he's just never partaken in it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and for me, it's just like, once again, like, I feel like this guy isn't getting enough credit for what he does. But more importantly, I love that he's giving everything for the glory of God. And that no matter what, like, that's his focus is to just do what God's called him to do. So
Yeah. Pujols has always been a special guy. You can always tell he's been a beloved teammate of a lot of of any team that he's been on. He has been on many teams, obviously, but something interesting that struck me in that article too, Kenny, was that he felt like baseball kind of also led to his father drinking quite a bit. He said that it kind of just went along with each other. That his dad was probably like playing in like a softball league and stuff like that. And after the game, it was just natural for them to have a lot of drinks. And he felt like that
yeah,
short, that definitely impacted his dad. But he also seeing his mother be an alcoholic and saying, I'm never gonna even touch, any alcohol, and he hasn't. But he just kept saying, "Glory of God." It's all for God's glory. We're gonna have time to maybe in another podcast to go over his stats and recap his career, but and I think we've done that a little bit before. But you know what's been amazing about this year? Do you know how many home runs he had going into the month of August? No, I do. Do
like
you?
career home runs.
No, no, not career. How many he had this year? He had only 6.
Like, oh, I was gonna guess 6 actually.
Yeah, he had only 6 home runs. So he's going on this tear, to catch. I think now he has like 22, something like that. I mean, he was like 16 home
Yeah,
runs away still from going into August. He was like 16 home runs away from this getting into the 700 club. And he's gone on this tear. And he's only playing against left-handed pitchers. He's only DH. He's been a part-time DH this year against left. It was brilliant for the Cardinals to bring him back because here now you're going to have this guy on the stage in the postseason. The Cardinals have a team that is a combination of these great veterans like Arenado and Goldschmidt. You still have Yachty for his last year, Wainwright, and they've got these great young players as well, like DeYoung. And now you throw in a leader like Pujols. But not only is he a leader, he's out there tearing it up. And he's only starting against left-handed pitching, which makes it even more amazing. I mean, it's an amazing story. And you said it from the beginning, you're right. It's been overshadowed some with Aaron Judge's. And I don't know how you fix that. It's just the way it is, right? It's definitely what he's done has been a little bit overshadowed, but anyway, what a great story. He's an inspiration. John Wall's an inspiration. Take us home, man.
all right. This is Kenny Squared End
Kenny,
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have a lot to talk about next week because we'll probably have the postseason matchups, right? By next Thursday.
Yeah.
I think we will. So we'll be able to talk about that, and then I think it starts on Friday. And there we go. No days off,
Yeah.
right? All right. All right.
Yeah, they have Thursday off next week, though.
Yeah, just Thursday, and then I think everything starts Friday, and away we go. The battle for October will begin. All right.
Yep.
All right. Talk to everybody later.